My name is Dolores Mitchell, and at 68 years old, I found myself sitting alone in my small apartment, staring at the beautiful wedding invitation that had just arrived in my mailbox. It was elegant cream-colored with gold lettering, announcing the union of my only daughter, Eliza, to her fiancé James Henderson at the prestigious Oakmont Country Club. The RSVP card was missing. Not an oversight, I realized with a sinking feeling. A deliberate exclusion. If you've ever felt the sting of rejection from your own child, this story might give you strength. I'm sharing my journey from heartbreak to healing because no mother should suffer in silence. Please like and subscribe to my channel and share this video with someone who needs to hear that there is power in standing up for yourself, even when it's your own flesh and blood who has hurt you. I'd raised Eliza alone after her father abandoned us when she was just 3 years old. For 25 years I worked 2 jobs days as an elementary school secretary and evenings waiting tables to give her everything she needed. I paid for piano lessons, dance classes, and eventually, her college education. I'd gone without new clothes, dental work, and vacations so she could have the opportunities I never had. Every sacrifice seemed worth it when she graduated with honors and landed a job at a prestigious marketing firm in the city. Our relationship began changing when she met James, the son of Maxwell Henderson, owner of Henderson Real Estate Development. The Hendersons lived in the type of neighborhood where I cleaned houses on weekends for extra money. From the first time I met them at an awkward dinner where Mrs. Henderson examined my clothing with barely disguised disdain, I sensed trouble, but I smiled and brought my homemade apple pie, which remained untouched as they served expensive store-bought tiramisu instead. "Mom, maybe wear something a bit more modern next time," Eliza suggested on the drive home. "And perhaps don't mention that you work as a waitress. Just say you're a school administrator." The gap between us widened as Eliza was absorbed into the Henderson world of country club memberships and charity galas. My calls went unanswered for days. My invitations for our traditional Sunday brunches were declined with increasingly transparent excuses. When I visited her new apartment, purchased with a down payment from James's parents, my handmade housewarming gifts were quickly tucked away in closets, out of sight. Then came the engagement. I learned about it on Facebook 2 days after it happened, when a distant cousin called to congratulate me. The pain of not being included in that moment was sharp, but I told myself there would be plenty of time to be involved in the wedding planning. I was her mother, after all. But there wasn't. Eliza's future mother-in-law took charge, and my daughter seemed content to let her. When I called offering to help address invitations or shop for her dress, Eliza was always too busy or had already handled it with Mrs. Henderson. "It's just easier this way, Mom," she explained during one of our increasingly rare phone calls. "Barbara knows all the right people, all the right places." And now, the wedding invitation without an RSVP card. A courtesy notification, not an actual invitation. My daughter was getting married in front of 200 people, and I wasn't considered important enough to be among them. I called Eliza immediately. "Oh, Mom," she sighed when I asked about the missing RSVP card. "I thought I explained this. The wedding is very exclusive. James's family has certain expectations about the guest list. I wanted to keep you informed about the date, but Barbara felt it would be uncomfortable to have you there." "Uncomfortable?" My voice trembled. "I'm your mother." "I know, but it's complicated. The Hendersons are very particular about appearances, and, well, you wouldn't fit in with their crowd. You'd feel out of place." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So you're saying I'm not invited to my only daughter's wedding? That I'm not good enough for your new family?" "Don't be dramatic, Mom," Eliza said coldly. "This is my special day, and I need it to be perfect. James's family is contributing $300,000 to this wedding. They have the right to set certain conditions." "And one condition is excluding your mother?" I asked, tears streaming down my face. "There will be a small family dinner afterward. You can come to that," she offered, as if throwing me a bone. "Just the immediate family." After we hung up, I sat motionless, the invitation clutched in my trembling hands. The daughter I had raised, sacrificed for, loved unconditionally, was ashamed of me. I wasn't elegant enough, rich enough, or sophisticated enough to attend her wedding. 40 years of love and sacrifice dismissed because I didn't fit the image she wanted to project to her new family. That night, I cried, until there were no tears left. Then, as dawn broke, something shifted inside me. A lifetime of putting others first, my daughter, my students, everyone but myself, suddenly seemed like a terrible mistake. I had spent decades being the supportive, selfless mother, and where had it gotten me? Alone in a small apartment, excluded from the most important day of my daughter's life. What Eliza didn't know, what she had never bothered to ask, was that I wasn't just Dolores Mitchell, the worn-out secretary and waitress. Before I had her, before I gave up everything to be a single mother, I had been someone else entirely. I opened the cedar chest at the foot of my bed, the one place I kept mementos of my previous life. Underneath hand-knitted baby blankets and Eliza's first pair of shoes lay a leather portfolio I hadn't opened in decades. Inside were yellowed newspaper clippings, awards, and photographs from another lifetime. Dolores Collins Takes Fashion World by Storm, read one headline from a 1978 issue of the city newspaper. In the photo, a younger version of myself stood confidently beside a collection of evening gowns I had designed. Before Eliza, before her father left, I had been a promising fashion designer with my own small label. I had dressed local celebrities and was on the verge of a breakthrough when I became pregnant. When Richard abandoned us, I had to give up my studio, sell my sewing machines, and take stable jobs to support my child. I had never told Eliza the full story. She knew I could sew. I had made many of her clothes when she was young, but I had never shared my past success or the dreams I had sacrificed. It had seemed unnecessary, even self-indulgent, to dwell on what might have been. But now, as I looked at these fragments of my past life, I wondered if my silence had been a mistake. Had I allowed her to see me only as the struggling mother, never as the woman with talent and potential? Among the clippings was a business card, faded but still legible. Alexandra Winters, my closest friend from my design days. We had lost touch over the years, but Alexandra had gone on to become a major name in the fashion industry. On impulse, I picked up my phone and searched for her. Within minutes, I found the website for her design house, Alexandra Winters Couture, now a well-respected brand specializing in bridal and evening wear. I hesitated, then sent an email to the contact address on the website. I explained who I was, referenced our past connection, and briefly outlined my situation. I didn't expect a response. Alexandra was a successful businesswoman now, probably too busy to remember an old friend who had disappeared from the fashion world 40 years ago. To my surprise, my phone rang just an hour later. "Dolores Collins? Is it really you?" Alexandra's voice was older but unmistakable, still carrying that slight French accent from her years studying in Paris. "It's Mitchell now," I corrected gently. "But yes, it's me." "My God, where have you been? I looked for you after you disappeared. Your landlord said you'd moved away, left no forwarding address." I explained everything, Eliza. Richard's abandonment, my years of working multiple jobs. Alexandra listened without interrupting. "And now your daughter is getting married and doesn't want you there because you're not fancy enough? That's outrageous," she declared when I finished. The Dolores I knew was more talented, more elegant, and had better taste than any of these nouveau riche social climbers. We talked for 2 hours, catching up on 40 years of life. Alexandra had married, divorced, built her brand into an empire, and was now semi-retired, with her daughter taking over more of the business. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "I've kept some of your sketches all these years. That collection you were working on before you left it was brilliant, ahead of its time. Some of those designs would still be stunning today." "You kept my sketches?" I was astonished. "Of course. I always hoped you'd come back someday." There was a pause. "Dolores, I have a proposition for you. This daughter of yours and these pretentious in-laws, they think you're not good enough? Let's show them exactly who Dolores Collins Mitchell really is." Alexandra's plan was audacious, even a bit vengeful, but as she outlined it, I felt a spark of the old fire I had thought long extinguished. Why shouldn't I reclaim my dignity? Why shouldn't I show my daughter that the mother she was ashamed of had once been and still could be someone remarkable? Over the next few weeks, Alexandra and I worked together in secret. She came to my apartment with fabric samples, design books, and her laptop. Together we created something extraordinary, not just a dress, but a statement. Alexandra introduced me to her daughter Victoria, now the creative director of the brand, who embraced our conspiracy with enthusiasm. "Mom has told me about you for years," Victoria said during our first meeting. She always said you were the one who got away the designer who could have been bigger than Vera Wang. With Victoria's connections, our plan expanded. A prominent stylist friend of hers agreed to help. A photographer who owed Alexandra a favor was enlisted. A well-known society columnist, intrigued by the story, promised coverage. Meanwhile, I did my homework on the Hendersons. Through old friends and social media, I learned everything I could about Barbara and Maxwell Henderson. I discovered that Barbara, despite her airs of old money, came from a background not unlike my own. Her father had been a plumber, her mother a school cafeteria worker. She had reinvented herself after marrying Maxwell, whose real estate business had boomed in the 90s. Their social status, which they guarded so jealously, was relatively new and somewhat precarious. I also learned something else, something that would become crucial to my plan. Barbara Henderson had been involved in a minor scandal 2 years ago. She had chaired a charity gala for children's cancer research, but an audit had later revealed that nearly 40% of the funds had been diverted to administrative costs, including Barbara's designer wardrobe for the event and a weekend planning retreat at a luxury spa for the committee members. The story had been quickly hushed up, but the records were still accessible if one knew where to look. The day before the wedding, I received a call from Eliza. "Mom," she said, sounding stressed, "I just wanted to remind you about the family dinner tomorrow night at 7. It's at Le Bistro on 5th Avenue. Please dress appropriately." "Don't worry, dear," I replied calmly. "I'll make sure not to embarrass you." The wedding was at 4 o'clock. At precisely 3:45, a sleek black town car pulled up to the Oakmont Country Club. The driver opened the door, and I stepped out, almost unrecognizable. Gone was the faded secretary with sensible shoes and discount store clothes. In her place stood a woman transformed. I wore a stunning evening gown in deep midnight blue, custom designed by Alexandra Winters Couture by me, in fact, from one of my original sketches, updated and brought to life with Alexandra's resources. The cut was sophisticated, emphasizing my still slender figure with intricate beadwork that caught the light with every movement. My silver hair, usually pulled back in a simple bun, had been styled by one of the city's top hairdressers into an elegant updo. Professional makeup accentuated my best features while minimizing the signs of age. Around my neck was the pièce de résistance, Alexandra's personal loan for the occasion, a sapphire and diamond necklace from her private collection, worth more than my annual salary. In my hand I carried a small clutch containing just 3 items: my invitation, a sealed envelope, and a USB drive. As I approached the entrance, I was stopped by a young man with a clipboard. "Excuse me, ma'am. Your name, please?" "Dolores Mitchell," I replied confidently. "Mother of the bride." He scanned his list, frowning. "I'm sorry, I don't see your name here." "That's odd," I said, extracting the invitation from my clutch. "I have my invitation right here." "There must be some mistake," he stammered, clearly confused by the discrepancy between my elegant appearance and my absence from the guest list. "Let me check with Mrs. Henderson." "Please do," I smiled. "And while you're at it, please tell her that Dolores Collins Mitchell is here. She'll know who I am." I waited calmly as he hurried inside. Minutes later, Barbara Henderson herself appeared, her face a mask of controlled fury beneath her perfect makeup. "Dolores," she hissed, pulling me aside. "What do you think you're doing? Eliza made it clear you weren't invited to the ceremony." "Did she?" I replied mildly. "How strange, since I have an invitation right here. Perhaps there was a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding. You weren't supposed to be here, and you certainly weren't supposed to look like." She gestured vaguely at my outfit, momentarily at a loss for words. "Like someone who belongs at your precious country club?" I finished for her. "Someone whose appearance won't embarrass you. Well, appearances can be deceiving, can't they, Barbara? Much like charity gala financial reports." Her face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do. And I think we both know that certain society columnists would find it fascinating reading. Now, shall we go inside? I believe my daughter is getting married in 15 minutes, and I've waited a lifetime for this moment." She hesitated, clearly calculating her options, then nodded stiffly. "Fine, but stay in the back, and don't make a scene." "I wouldn't dream of it," I replied, following her into the magnificent hall where 200 of the city's elite had gathered to witness my daughter's wedding. I took a seat in the last row, just as the music began. A ripple went through the crowd as people noticed me and whispered questions about my identity. I sat quietly, with dignity, as Eliza walked down the aisle looking breathtakingly beautiful in her designer gown. I smiled through my tears as she and James exchanged vows. I was her mother, after all, and despite everything, I loved her. After the ceremony, during the cocktail hour before the reception, Alexandra made her entrance with Victoria. Their presence caused an immediate stir. Alexandra Winters was fashion royalty, and her attendance at an event immediately elevated its status. They made a beeline for me, greeting me with warm hugs and air kisses like the old friend I was. "Dolores, darling, the dress is magnificent on you," Alexandra declared loudly. "One of your best designs ever. We must discuss bringing your collection out of the archives for a retrospective." The nearby guests froze, cocktails halfway to their lips, as they processed this information. I could see the questions forming in their minds. This woman designed her own Alexandra Winters gown? She has a collection in the Winters archives? Who exactly is the mother of the bride? As planned, Victoria expertly steered the conversation to introduce me to key influencers in the room: a fashion editor from a major magazine, the owner of a luxury department store, a Broadway producer, and his wife. With each introduction, Alexandra or Victoria casually mentioned my background, my sabbatical from design, and the exciting possibilities of my return to the industry. The whispers spread through the room like wildfire. By the time we entered the reception hall, the narrative had completely shifted. I was no longer the embarrassing mother who didn't fit in. I was Dolores Collins, the lost design talent, the woman with connections to Alexandra Winters, the mysterious figure with an intriguing past. Eliza found me as I was chatting with the wife of a state senator about the evolution of evening wear in the last 4 decades. "Mom," she said, her voice a mixture of confusion and shock, "what are you, how did you, is that Alexandra Winters you're talking to?" I excused myself from my conversation and turned to my daughter. "Hello, Eliza. You look beautiful, dear. The ceremony was lovely." "Mom, what's going on? You weren't supposed to be here until dinner. And where did you get that dress? How do you know Alexandra Winters?" Before I could answer, Barbara Henderson appeared at Eliza's elbow. "Your mother and I had a little chat," Barbara said tightly. "There was a misunderstanding about the invitation. Everything's fine now." "But everyone's talking about her," Eliza hissed. "Mrs. Caldwell just asked me if it's true my mother was a famous designer." I smiled serenely. "Not famous, dear. Just promising. I had to give it up when your father left us. Some sacrifices are worth making for the people you love." The color drained from Eliza's face as the implications of my words sank in. For perhaps the first time, she was seeing me not just as her mother, but as a woman who had once had dreams of her own, talents of her own, a life beyond motherhood. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" she asked quietly. "You never asked," I replied simply. "And it didn't seem important. What mattered was giving you the opportunities I lost." Just then, James appeared at Eliza's side, looking uncomfortable. "Eliza, your mother's speech is scheduled after my parents'. The coordinator needs to know if that's still happening." "Speech?" Eliza looked panicked. "Mom wasn't supposed to give a speech. She wasn't even supposed to be at the ceremony." "But she's here now," James pointed out reasonably. "And apparently everyone wants to hear from her. Did you know she used to design for celebrities?" The reception proceeded with a surreal quality. I was seated at the head table, between Alexandra and Victoria, across from a visibly uncomfortable Barbara Henderson. Throughout dinner, people stopped by to introduce themselves, to inquire about my connection to Alexandra, to ask if the rumors about my design career were true. When it was time for speeches, Maxwell Henderson gave a boastful address about family legacy and the joining of 2 exceptional young people. Barbara followed with a carefully rehearsed speech about welcoming Eliza into their family. Then, to my surprise, the MC announced, "And now, a few words from the mother of the bride, Dolores Mitchell." A hush fell over the room as I stood and approached the microphone. I removed the sealed envelope from my clutch and opened it slowly. "I had prepared a different speech for tonight," I began, looking down at the paper in my hands. "A speech about sacrifice, about disappointment, about what it feels like to be deemed unworthy of attending your only child's wedding." The room was dead silent now. I could feel Eliza's mortification, Barbara's fury, the collective discomfort of 200 guests. But looking at my beautiful daughter today, I realize that's not the message I want to leave her with as she begins her married life. I deliberately set the original speech aside. Instead, I want to talk about love, real love, the kind that puts someone else's needs before your own, the kind that makes you give up your dreams so they can have theirs, the kind that forgives, even when it hurts. I look directly at Eliza now. I gave up a promising career to raise you alone. I worked jobs I hated to give you opportunities I never had. I did it willingly, without resentment, because that's what mothers do. We sacrifice, we endure, we love unconditionally. Tears were streaming down Eliza's face now. James had taken her hand, squeezing it supportively. But today I realized something important, I continued. In teaching you that love means sacrifice, I failed to teach you that love also means respect. Respect for the person who loves you, for their dignity, for their worth as a human being beyond what they can give or do for you. I paused, looking around the room at the rapt audience. To all the mothers here tonight, I say this: don't make my mistake. Don't let your children see only your sacrifice, never your strength. Don't become so invisible in your giving that they forget you are a person with your own value, your own dreams. I turned back to Eliza. And to my daughter I say this: I forgive you. Not because what you did wasn't hurtful, but because I understand why you did it. You wanted to belong to this new world, this seemingly perfect world of wealth and privilege. You were willing to deny a part of yourself, the part that came from me, to fit in. But Eliza, the people who truly love you will never ask you to be less than who you are, or to deny where you came from. I raised my glass. To Eliza and James, may your marriage be built on mutual respect, honest communication, and love that recognizes the inherent worth in each of you. The applause was thunderous. I returned to my seat, where Alexandra squeezed my hand in silent support. Across the table, Barbara Henderson looked as though she had swallowed something sour, while Maxwell seemed genuinely moved. Later, as the band played and couples filled the dance floor, Eliza approached me alone. "Mom, can we talk privately?" We found a quiet corner in the garden outside. "I don't know what to say," she began, her voice small. "I'm so ashamed." "That's not what I wanted," I told her honestly. "I didn't come here for revenge or to shame you. I came because I'm your mother, and nothing, not social status, not wealth, not appearances, should have the power to erase that bond. But how can you forgive me so easily, after what I did?" I looked at her carefully, this beautiful young woman in her expensive gown, who had been so quick to discard me when I became inconvenient. "I don't think forgiveness is what we're talking about here, Eliza. What you did wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate choice to erase me because you were ashamed of where you came from." "Mom, please," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "I was wrong. I see that now." "You see it now because I'm wearing a designer gown and Alexandra Winters is singing my praises," I replied calmly. "But would you see it if I were still just the waitress in sensible shoes? I don't think you would." "That's not fair," she protested weakly. "No, it wasn't fair. None of this was fair. 25 years of sacrifice wasn't fair. Being excluded from your wedding wasn't fair. Having to prove my worth to my own daughter wasn't fair." Eliza reached for my hand, but I gently pulled away. "I didn't come here tonight expecting reconciliation, Eliza. I came to reclaim my dignity, to show you and myself that your rejection doesn't define me." "What are you saying?" Her voice trembled. "I'm saying that some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. You made your choice when you decided I wasn't good enough for your new life. Now I'm making mine. You're cutting me off? Over one mistake?" There was a hint of the old entitlement in her voice. I shook my head sadly. This wasn't one mistake. It was the culmination of years of growing disdain. Years of you being embarrassed by me, hiding me away, wishing I were someone else. Tonight wasn't about punishing you, Eliza. It was about freeing myself. I stood up, smoothing the elegant fabric of my gown. "I wish you and James happiness in your marriage. I truly do. Perhaps someday you'll understand that real love, the kind I've always had for you, sees the worth in someone regardless of their appearance, their status, or their usefulness. ICM." "Mom, please don't go," she begged, suddenly sounding like a little girl again. "I already went," I said softly. "The moment you decided I wasn't worthy of witnessing your vows. Tonight, I'm just making it official. I walked away then, head held high, ignoring her calls behind me. It hurt, of course it hurt, but there was also a strange sense of lightness, of freedom. I left the reception, the same town car waiting to take me home. In my small apartment, I carefully removed the sapphire necklace to return to Alexandra. I hung up the beautiful gown that represented not just my past, but possibly my future. Then I sat at my small kitchen table and opened my laptop. The email from Victoria Winters was already waiting in my inbox. The reaction to your story was incredible. Let's meet next week to discuss bringing some of your archived designs into a special collection. Second acts are rare in fashion, but I think yours might be spectacular. The next morning, my phone showed 12 missed calls from Eliza. I didn't return them. Instead, I called Alexandra to discuss the upcoming meeting with Victoria. As we talked about fabrics and sketches, I felt a creativity awakening within me that had been dormant for decades. Over the following weeks, as Eliza's calls and messages continued, gradually growing less frequent, I threw myself into my resurrection as a designer. Victoria featured 5 of my vintage designs in a special capsule collection that generated significant buzz in the fashion world. At 70, I found myself with a consulting contract, a small studio space in Alexandra's building, and a renewed sense of purpose. 6 months later, I received a formal envelope in the mail. Inside was a birth announcement. Eliza had given birth to a baby girl. There was a handwritten note. "Her name is Dolores. I hope someday you'll meet her." I put the announcement in a drawer, neither answering nor discarding it. Perhaps someday the wound would heal enough for me to consider a relationship with my granddaughter. But for now, I needed to focus on myself, on the woman I had been before sacrificing everything for a daughter who had been so quick to discard me. What my daughter didn't know when she tried to exclude me from her wedding was that I wasn't just Dolores Mitchell, the struggling single mother. I was Dolores Collins, the woman who had once made beauty with her hands, who had sacrificed her dreams but never lost her talent, who had friends in unexpected places, and who had finally remembered her own worth. Sometimes the greatest act of self-love is walking away from those who don't value you, even when they share your blood. In excluding me from the most important day of her life, my daughter had inadvertently set me free to reclaim not just my dignity, but my identity beyond motherhood. At 68, I was starting over, and for the first time in decades, the future looked bright. To all of you watching who have been dismissed, diminished, or discarded by those who should have treasured you most, I want you to know your worth isn't determined by how others treat you. You don't need anyone's permission to reclaim your dignity or to remember who you were before life's disappointments reshaped you. It's never too late to stand up for yourself, to remember your talents, to pursue your dreams,